周小川阁下，尊敬的博鳌亚洲论坛资委会主席、日本前首相福田康夫阁下，尊敬的曾培炎副主席阁下，尊敬的各位部长、驻华使节、国际组织代表、各位来宾、女士们、先生们，大家上午好。首先，我荣幸地宣布，博鳌亚洲论坛2023年年会正式开幕。在今天开幕式上致辞的各国领导人和各国使节，还有国际组织的负责人有中华人民共和国国务院总理李强阁下、新加坡共和国总理李显龙阁下、西班牙王国首相桑切斯阁下、马来西亚总理安瓦尔阁下、国际货币基金组织总裁戈尔基耶娃女士及企业家的代表，我谨代表博鳌亚洲论坛，对各位领导人和国际组织负责人表示热烈的欢迎和衷心的感谢。全球新冠肺炎疫情爆发以来，博鳌亚洲论坛同世界各国一道，经受住严峻的多重的挑战，并积极地参与国际抗疫合作，为推动区域和世界经济复苏做出了不懈努力。本届论坛年会完全恢复线下举行模式，各国政府、工商界、学术界领袖重聚一堂，探讨亚洲和全球发展大计。我谨向东道国和有关国家政府以及各界人士向论坛提供的大力支持表示衷心的感谢。当前全球，我们正面临着方方面面的挑战，这种挑战层出不穷。世界正在经历深刻而宏阔的历史之变。我们热情地期待本届论坛年会在和平发展、合作共赢的旗帜引领下，在各方共同参与下，继续迸发出引领时代的思想，化解挑战的良方，凝聚共识的力量。下面我邀请博鳌亚洲论坛理事长潘基文阁下致欢迎词。
Your Excellency Li Chang, Premier of the State Council of People's Republic of China, Dear Excellencies, Prime Ministers from Côte d'Ivoire, Kazakhstan, Malaysia, Singapore, and Spain, and Managing Director of IMF, distinguished ministers, ladies and gentlemen, and also among the guests, I recognized the presence of participation of Honorable Mary Robinson, Chair of the Elders, former President of Ireland, and Honorable Danilo Turk, chair of the Madrid Club, former president of Slovenia, and it's a great honor for me to welcome all of you to Annual Conference 2023 of the Boao Forum for Asia. Thank you for your participation. For many of us, this is the first time we meet face-to-face in 4 years' time. It's a happy reunion after such a long interval. It is a great start for our new journey after so many crises, shocks, and surprises. It's time to look ahead and plan for our shared future. It's time for renewed action on challenges of long-term and global nature. We cannot keep pace as the world's attention is preoccupied with the virus, conflict, inflation, and recession. Global temperatures continue to rise unabatedly. We have gone through the 7 hottest years on record. More will surely come if climate action stays behind the pace of climate change instead of overtaking it. And the poverty clock. For a time, the pandemic alone threatened to push some 100 million people back into extreme poverty. The real number could be worse. Food and energy crisis following the conflict in Ukraine dealt with another heavy blow to those struggling to make ends meet. As inflation persists, the poor and the vulnerable faces a worsening cost of living crisis. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has forecast a still tougher year for the economy. That's bad news, again, for the stalled global fight against extreme poverty and climate and inequality. When the economy goes bad, the poor and the vulnerable bears the brunt. If it goes well, the rich and privileged few countries wins the most. That's the harsh reality we have to face in addressing inequality and ever-widening gap of income and wealth. The past 3 years have only seen it grow worse. This is not only unfair and unjust, but economically unviable and unsustainable. Without a strong and stable middle class supported by political will, economic growth and prosperity will not last long. The list goes on and on. The UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals has listed 17 goals of sustainable development to be accomplished by 2030. We have only a little more than 7 years to go. Where are we now? Where are we now? Barely half done, less than half done. Let me repeat, we do not have much time left. The past 3 years is a lost window of opportunity in many ways. Because of pandemic, we must make up for the loss with a greater urgency, stronger will, and bolder actions. Let's not waste our invaluable time and limited time in geopolitical rivalry, ideological confrontations, and geo-economic fragmentations. Rather, let's get reunited to take on our common and long-term challenges. Clearly, solidarity and cooperation remains the best way through the uncharted waters of global uncertainty. Yes, we have piles upon piles of immediate and short-term headaches. Our hands are full and heavy. There is no underestimation their urgency and complexity, but we must caution against being blinded by short-sightedness. We should have global vision, longer vision, united by global partnership. The cost of losing sight of the bigger picture is just too high. Standing at this podium, ladies and gentlemen, I see in front of me an audience of more than 2,000 political, business, intellectual, and opinion leaders of the world that can shape, who can really shape the course and future of this dynamic region and the world at large. I take this opportunity to appeal to the leaders of the world and citizens of the world to think ahead, think long-term, think global, and think big. I count on your global and wisdom to secure our shared future of sustainable and inclusive peace and prosperity. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let us work together as global citizenship to make this world sustainable and better for all. That's your political and, for us, moral responsibility for our succeeding generations and the only planet Earth, which we have to care. Thank you very much. 谢谢。
感谢潘基文理事长阁下的致辞。我荣幸地邀请中华人民共和国国务院总理李强阁下致辞。
尊敬的各位政府首脑，尊敬的各位国际组织负责人，尊敬的潘基文理事长、各位理事，尊敬的各位来宾，女士们、先生们、朋友们，大家上午好！很高兴与大家相聚在美丽的海南岛，共同出席博鳌亚洲论坛2023年的年会。首先，我谨代表中国政府对年会的召开表示热烈的祝贺，对各位远道而来的客人表示热烈的欢迎，对大家长期以来给予中国发展的关心支持表示衷心的感谢。今年的年会主题以“不确定的世界，团结合作，迎挑战，开放包容，促发展”，我觉得非常好，契合了当前形势和各方的关切，具有很强的现实意义。大家知道，当今世界变乱交织，人类社会面临了前所未有的挑战，不确定、不稳定、难预料，成为了常态。在这样一个充满不确定性的大变局中，大家迫切地希望能有更多、更强大的确定性力量，来推动我们这个世界朝着 美好的未来前进。10年前，中国国家主席习近平先生首次提出人类命运共同体的重要理念。此后，他又在包括博鳌亚洲论坛在内的很多国际场合，深刻阐述了构建人类命运共同体的中国主张，进一步提出全球发展倡议、全球安全倡议、全球文明倡议，为全球发展和治理提供了中国方案。10年来，我们中国以务实行动推动构建人类命运共同体，取得了一系列重大的实践成果。特别是我们高质量的共建“一带一路”，带动广大发展中国家加快发展，为世界经济拓展了新空间。同时，我们在倡导政治解决危机、解决国际热点问题、劝和促谈、化干戈为玉帛等方面，我们也做出了卓有成效的努力，展现了负责任大国的担当。这些都是人类命运共同体理念的生动实践。事实证明，人类命运共同体理念已经成为引领时代潮流和人类进步的旗帜，成为推动世界持久和平、共同繁荣、确定性力量的源泉。现在，亚洲和世界都处在历史演变的十字路口，我们要高举人类命运共同体理念的旗帜，携手构建亚洲命运共同体，打造世界的和谐稳定，打造世界的增强动力源，打造世界的合作新高地，为世界和平和发展注入更多确定性，努力创造人类更加美好的未来。第一，共同守护和平稳定的发展环境，为变乱交织的国际局势注入更多确定性。和平是发展的前提。过去几十年，亚洲之所以能够取得世界瞩目的发展成就，离不开我们亚洲总体和平稳定这样一个大环境。未来亚洲要实现更大发展，绝不能生乱，绝不能生战，否则我们就会自断前程。诞生于近70年前的和平共处5项原则和万隆精神，是亚洲人民的智慧结晶。以相互尊重、协商一致、照顾各方舒适度等为重要原则的亚洲方式，为国家间合作发展提供了根本遵循。世界形势越是动荡不安，我们越要倍加珍惜这些宝贵财富，坚决守住来之不易的和平局面。我们要始终坚持睦邻友好，坚持东盟在东亚区域合作中的中心地位，安危共处与共，命运与共，确保亚洲持久和平稳定。我们要落实全球安全倡议，坚持共同 综合、合作、可持续的安全观，反对滥用单边制裁和长臂管辖，反对选边站队、集团对抗和新冷战。我们坚持以和平方式解决国家之间分歧和争端，共同维护世界的和平安宁。第二，共同打造更具活力的增长中心，为世界经济复苏注入更多的确定性。我们亚洲拥有世界上60%的人口，40%的经济总量，超过30%的国际贸易，是真正的世界经济的压舱石、动力源、推进器。我们要落实全球发展倡议，抓住新一轮科技革命和产业变革的机遇，在数字经济、绿色经济等领域广泛开展合作，打造新的增长极，使亚洲能够成为世界经济复苏和发展的新的动力源。要深入推进区域经济一体化，加强宏观政策的协调，高质量地实施区域全面经济伙伴关系协定，积极推进中国东盟自贸区3.0版的谈判，构建优势互补、合作共赢的区域生产分工体系，推动形成更加开放区域大市场。我们要构建开放型的世界经济，高质量的共建“一带一路”，促进全球贸易、投资自由化、便利化，反对贸易保护主义和脱钩断链，要确保全球产业链、供应链的稳定畅通，为世界经济的发展注入强劲的动能。第三，共同拓展团结合作的有效途径，为深刻变革的全球治理注入更多的确定性。大家知道，当今世界就是一个地球村，我们是共同生活在地球村里面，各国的前途、命运都是紧密地联系在一起。我们面临的许多全球性的问题，需要各国之间坐下来共同协商、共同解决。去年我们很欣喜地看到，亚洲国家先后成功举办了金砖国家领导人会晤、东亚合作领导人系列会议、20国集团领导人峰会、亚太经合组织领导人非正式会议等等，为完善全球治理发挥了重要作用。我们要坚持共商、共建、共享的全球治理观，积极参与全球治理体系的改革和建设，坚定维护以联合国为核心的国际体系和以国际法为基础的国际秩序，不断深化粮食、能源、生态环保、防灾减灾、气候变化、减贫等领域的合作，共同发出和平与发展的时代强音，共同释放坚持多边主义的积极信号，推动全球治理体系朝着更加 公平合理的方向发展。第四，共同推动人文交流走深走实，为不同文明的交融共生注入更多的确定性。前不久，习近平主席提出了全球文明倡议，为推进文明交流互鉴、促进人类文明进步提供了重要指引。亚洲是文明多样性的代表，不同文明交相辉映。同时，亚洲各国处在不同的发展阶段，大多数国家，包括我们中国在内，仍然是发展中国家。每个国家都有自己独特的历史文化和具体国情。我们愿意与各方一道落实全球文明倡议，努力开创人文交流、文化交融、民心相通的新局面。要坚持互尊互信、开放包容，尊重各国自主选择的发展道路，反对文明冲突论和意识形态的对抗，要弘扬全人类的共同价值，要加强文化、教育、卫生、青年、媒体等一些领域的交流，以真诚沟通增进理解和信任，以求同存异妥善处理分歧和问题，打造不同文明交融共生的新样板。女士们、先生们、朋友们，作为世界上最大的发展中国家，中国发展本身具有世界意义。我们在全力办好我们自己事情的同时，主动顺应和平、发展、合作、共赢的时代潮流，始终做世界和平的建设者、全球发展的贡献者、国际秩序的维护者。我们中国创造了经济快速发展、社会长期稳定两大奇迹，这本身就是对世界的巨大贡献。可以说，在不确定的事件中，中国的确定性是维护世界和平和发展的中流砥柱。过去如此，未来和当下更是如此。从未来来看，中国发展的目标、发展的前景是确定的。大家也都关注到，去年10月份，我们召开了中国共产党第20次全国代表大会，破画了中国未来发展的蓝图，明确提出到本世纪中叶，中国共产党的中心任务就是团结带领全国各族人民全面建成社会主义现代化强国，实现第2个100年奋斗目标，以中国式现代化全面推进中华民族伟大复兴。中国要建设的现代化是人口规模巨大，全体人民共同富裕，物质文明和精神文明相协调，人和自然和谐共生，走和平发展道路的现代化。我们绝不会通过战争、殖民、 掠夺等方式去实现现代化。我们一定会用和平和发展的方式，使14亿多人口整体迈进现代化社会。这将为亚洲和世界经济增长带来强劲的动能。当然，要完成这个，谢谢。当然，要完成这个中心工作，需要长时间的持续奋斗。在这个过程当中，无论世界发生什么样的变化，我们都将始终坚持改革开放、创新驱动，既为整个世界经济发展不断注入新的动力和活力，也让世界各国分享中国发展的机遇、中国发展的红利。我想，一个长期稳定、一心发展的中国，一个脚踏实地、勇毅前行的中国，一个自信开放、乐于共享的中国，一定是世界繁荣稳定的巨大力量。从当下看，中国经济增长的动能和态势是强劲的。今年前2个月，中国经济已经呈现出恢复向好的态势。从3月份情况来看，比1、2月份情况会更好。特别是消费、投资等主要经济指标不断向好，就业、物价总体稳定，市场预期有了明显改善，制造业采购经理指数连续站在荣枯线以上。多个国际组织的，包括昨天 IMF 的总裁女士，我们在交谈的时候也都讲到，很多国际组织都调高了对中国经济发展的预期。应该说，现实情况比我们统计数字更有说服力。就是我们这次召开论坛的海南省，我这2天与海南省的负责人多次进行了交谈。原来海南每年最典型的是春节期间旅游黄金周，今年就不是个黄金周了，旅游变成了黄金月，变成了黄金季。这段时间，海南岛仍然是游人如织，离岛免税商品销售情况持续火热，这些都充分反映出中国经济韧性强、潜力大、活力足，反映出中国经济长期向好的基本面，也反映出中国经济社会发展的政策措施是科学有效的。下一步，我们将继续坚持稳字当头、稳中求进，巩固拓展经济恢复向好的态势，推动中国经济运行持续整体好转。我们将把实施扩大内需战略同深化供给侧结构性改革有机结合起来，持续扩大中国的市场规模。我们将在扩大市场准入、优化营商环境、保障项目落地方面推出新的一系列举措，不断地优化国企港干、民企港船、外企港投的 制度环境。我们将有效防范化解重大风险，特别是要保持我们国家金融运行的整体稳健，牢牢守住不发生系统性风险的底线。我们有信心、有能力推动中国经济这艘巨人乘风破浪，行稳致远，为世界经济发展做出更大的贡献。女士们、先生们、朋友们，今年还有一件亚洲大事，就是第19届亚运会将于今年的金秋季节在浙江省杭州市举办。疫情让相会延迟，也让我们对相聚更加期待。从天涯海角到西至湖畔，开放的中国一路上到处都有美好的风景，欢迎大家都到中国走一走、看一看。有风景的地方一定有新经济，有新经济的地方一定有我们合作共享的发展机遇。我相信，只有我们携起手来，团结合作，迎挑战，开放包容促发展，就一定能给亚洲、给世界带来更多的确定性，就一定能开创人类社会更加美好的未来。最后，我预祝本次年会圆满成功，谢谢大家。
谢谢李强总理的致辞。下面我荣幸地邀请新加坡总理李显龙阁下致辞。
Your Excellency, Premier Li Qiang, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, 大家早上好。Asia is a vibrant region with enormous promise. It's home to more than half the world's population, and Asians are increasingly better educated, brimming with energy, ideas, and dynamism. China is one of the biggest economies in the world. Its consumer market is huge and expanding. Its technology is advancing rapidly, and its workforce is increasingly skilled. India, too, is developing steadily with a youthful demographic advantage. And Southeast Asia has a growing middle class and is projected collectively to become the fourth largest economy in the world by the end of the decade. However, realizing Asia's promise depends on the region remaining stable, inclusive, and open. Like every other region, Asia is affected by the troubled global environment and strategic tensions. The COVID pandemic severely disrupted our societies, our economies, our supply chains. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has gravely violated the UN Charter and international law and profoundly undermined the rules-based international order. Most worrying is the state of relations between the US and China. Big powers have a heavy responsibility to maintain stable and workable relations with one another, because any clash between them will have grievous consequences for themselves and the world. And yet, the US and China are at odds over many intractable issues, including trade and investments, supply chains, cybersecurity, emerging and critical technologies, as well as freedom of navigation. We hope that China and the United States will succeed in stabilizing their relationship and establish sufficient mutual trust and respect to cooperate in areas where their interests are aligned. The world feels the impact of these tensions keenly. Progress on tackling urgent problems such as climate change, energy and food security, and pandemic preparedness has been severely impeded. Economic imperatives are being overshadowed by national security concerns. Countries are pursuing self-reliance and resilience by onshoring or friendshoring their supply chains. The bifurcation in technological and economic systems is deepening. And this will impose a huge economic cost on countries, as well as further exacerbate rivalries and frictions. Against this global backdrop, what can Asian countries do? First, we should continue to promote economic cooperation and good relations between China and countries in the region. China has become the largest trading partner for almost every country in Asia. It has launched also regional and global initiatives such as the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, the AIIB, the Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI, and the Global Development Initiative, the GDI. Other Asian countries reciprocate China's desire to deepen economic integration. Post-COVID, we encourage a revival of investment, trade, and tourism flows, and we look forward to participating in new growth opportunities in China's dynamic economy. Singapore's own ties with China are doing well. We are updating and improving the China-Singapore Free Trade Agreement and raising overall relations to a higher level. Our government-to-government cooperation projects have matched China's priorities at different stages of its development. The latest project, the Chongqing Connectivity Initiative, improves connectivity between Western China and Southeast Asia, and it is part of the Belt and Road Initiative. Even during the pandemic, Singapore kept up our ties with China. Our merchandise trade expanded by 6% last year. Singapore is one of the largest foreign sources of investments in China. At the same time, more and more Chinese companies are investing in Singapore, setting up headquarters and operations here. The economic cooperation between China and its Asian neighbors will be more robust if it is underpinned by a sound, broader relationship which builds mutual trust and fosters regional stability. There are many bilateral and regional issues that need to be resolved, and they should be managed in the spirit of goodwill and cooperation, peacefully and in accordance with international law, giving full weight to the perspectives and interests of countries big and small. From time to time, national interests will diverge and bilateral issues will arise. This is unavoidable. And when this happens, it is important that we insulate our economic relations from these difficulties and continue to do business with one another. We must strive to work together pragmatically for the benefit of our peoples, even when we may not see eye to eye on some issues. This will enable all Asian countries to coexist peacefully with one another and enjoy the space and security to chart their own paths towards development and prosperity. Secondly, besides strengthening their ties with China, countries in Asia also need to deepen cooperation with one another. We should build a dense mesh of cooperation and interdependence rather than a hub-and-spokes model, because this will result in a stronger and more resilient region. ASEAN is a key organization that promotes cooperation in Southeast Asia. ASEAN member states are working systematically to strengthen integration among ourselves. The ASEAN Digital Economy Framework Agreement will deepen our cooperation in a sector which will only become more crucial and pervasive. And the ASEAN Community Vision for 2025 provides a roadmap towards a rules-based, people-oriented, and people-centered ASEAN community. ASEAN centrality also helps to link up partners across Asia and beyond. Mechanisms like the East Asia Summit, the ASEAN +3, and the ASEAN Regional Forum have brought major players together and offered neutral platforms for productive dialogue and engagement. ASEAN also initiated the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which is the world's largest FTA, covering Southeast Asia, Northeast Asia, and Australasia. Many other complementary regional groupings exist in Asia. These include the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, the CPTPP, the Indo-Pacific Economic Forum, the IPEF, and the Digital Economy Partnership Agreement, or DEPA. These groupings are not mutually exclusive. They have varying memberships and often overlap with one another. Not every country needs to be in every group, but collectively, the different groupings build a resilient and interlocking network of cooperation among countries in Asia. At the same time, these regional groupings deepen ties between Asia and the rest of the world, and this gives our external partners stakes in Asia's peace and prosperity. Which brings me to my third point, that Asia should always remain an open region. As Asian countries develop cooperation among ourselves, we should also cultivate our relations with the US, Europe, and other parts of the world. For example, despite the tensions between China and the United States, their bilateral trade in goods hit a record high of close to $700 million last year. $700 billion last year. Other Asian countries, too, are keen to expand economic relations with other regions. Investments by European and American companies in Asia continue to grow. Asian countries are concluding FTAs with European countries and with the EU, and even with partners in Latin America. For example, Singapore has a free trade agreement with the Pacific Alliance. Strong economic ties across regions will foster greater interest among more stakeholders to engage constructively in Asia. This will encourage healthy competition, spur innovation and partnerships, moderate tensions when they arise, and make for a more stable and balanced region. Whether Asia can realize its promise will depend on how well countries in Asia maintain stable relations and cooperate practically and productively, both amongst themselves and with our external partners. As a very important economy in Asia, China has a big role to play in all of this. We welcome China's commitment to continue opening up its economy and to continue supporting multilateralism and regional cooperation. And we look forward to all parties contributing more actively to regional and global development and prosperity to benefit Asia and the world. Thank you very much.
谢谢新加坡总理李显龙阁下的致辞。下面我荣幸地邀请西班牙首相桑切斯阁下致辞。
Prime Minister Chang, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to be here in Hainan to take part in this prestigious annual conference of the BOA Forum, especially in an edition that combines in its title concepts such as solidarity and cooperation to face major global challenges. In just a few days, I have attended the European Council in Brussels, the Ibero-American Summit in Dominican Republic, and now I am here in an official visit to China. In less than a week, I will have met more than 40 leaders from 3 different continents. And let me be clear, in every meeting, I have heard the same yearning for peace, stability, and prosperity. Nobody wants economic fragmentation or war. Humanity faces global challenges of an unprecedented scale: a climate emergency, a pandemic, and the brutal and illegal aggression of Russia against Ukraine that is causing a major humanitarian crisis, food insecurity, inflation, and increasing debt distress in a growing number of vulnerable countries. In this context, the international community needs responsible and constructive players, and that is what Spain wants to be. Firstly, as a reliable and open country, but also as the upcoming presidency of the European Union, part of the Ibero-American community, and an active member of all big multilateral organizations and fora. It is essential to rebuild trust through dialogue, solidarity, and cooperation. In this vein, I welcome the intensification of diplomatic contacts of the Chinese authorities with leaders around the world. It reflects a high degree of responsibility, and we want to contribute to these efforts. Our views may differ in some areas, but we must continue to build bridges and increase mutual trust. Ladies and gentlemen, I firmly believe in a rules-based international order. Free, balanced, and fair trade is essential if we want stability and prosperity for all. A fragmented world dominated by protectionist tendencies represents a return to the past, with all its shadows and uncertainties. Some claim that the deglobalization process is underway. I do not think so. What is happening is a change in the way globalization is conceived and articulated. Production costs are no longer the only criteria to decide where to locate production facilities. Safety, environmental footprint, and above all, reliability have now gained relevance. And that is a positive sign. In fact, it will contribute to a more resilient, efficient, and sustainable supply chain. China's modernization and Asia's growth have been beneficial for the whole world. Asia and Europe have prospered hand in hand for decades, and they can continue to do so now. Together, China and Europe account for a quarter of the world's population and around the half of the world's GDP. We share many common interests and challenges. Our economies are deeply intertwined. But Europe is now adapting to new realities in a rapidly changing context. This implies accelerating its Green Deal to lead in the fight against climate change, moving away from Russia's gas and oil dependencies, and building a new green and digital industrial base. China and the European Union, as major markets and geopolitical entities, must compete in some areas and cooperate in others. And let me be frank, we will continue to defend the European values, principles, and views with an independent perspective and with a keen awareness of our goals, interests, and priorities. We won't give up on them. Our companies and often competitors, but also partners, in the development of transport, energy, and healthcare infrastructure projects, not only for Eurasia, but also for the world. Thus, recent investments by large Chinese construction groups in Spanish engineering companies are creating opportunities for the development of joint projects in Latin America. We must continue to deepen with this mutually beneficial collaboration, but we have to do it in a way that we respect the sovereignty of each country and we respect the rules. This means leveling the playing field and ensuring full reciprocity between partners. It means providing a stable regulatory framework that allows domestic and foreign companies to compete on an unequal footing. It means opening the East so the West doesn't have to close in itself. I firmly believe that relations between Europe and China, and by extension between Spain and China, do not need to be confrontational. There's ample room for win-win cooperation. We must remain partners economically and beyond. There are three key areas where the scope for collaboration is immense. First, strengthening multilateralism. We all believe in a strong, transparent, and rules-based multilateral system as a framework for discussing global challenges. No global problem can be solved unilaterally. Second, the need to accelerate the fight against climate change. As signatories to the Paris Agreement, we can do more to work together on the energy transition to keep the Paris temperature goal within reach. And third, achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and reforming the international financial architecture. The G20 and the SDG summits in September will provide an opportunity to show our common determination to increase financing for development and find solutions to the growing debt sustainability risks that face many low-income and emerging economies. And finally, let me stress how much we value the relationship with our Asian partners and with China in particular. This year, we celebrate the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between China and Spain. Much has changed since. Bilateral trade between our nations has significantly expanded, and it almost doubled between 2017 and 2022, growing from 32 billion euros to 57.7 billion euros last year. China is already Spain's first supplier and the largest market in Asia for Spanish companies. Meanwhile, the number of Chinese citizens visiting and companies working in Spain is also growing significantly. This is happening because today Spain is one of the best places in Europe to invest and do business. We offer an ideal geopolitical position, sitting at the intersection between three continents, a world-class digital and physical infrastructure, a vibrant and robust private sector, a highly educated workforce, affordable clean energy, and the institutional stability and legal certainty that investments need to thrive. Not for nothing, Spain continues to grow above the Eurozone average. It has one of the lowest inflation rates of the European Union, and it has reached all-time high levels of foreign direct investment, with flows just shy of 35 billion euros, much of it going to industrial projects and renewable energies. Foreign capital funded 860 greenfield projects last year, placing Spain in sixth place worldwide, above China, Japan, or France. Global investors are betting on Spain, and so is the European Union, which has granted us already over 70 billion euros from the European Union Next Generation Funds to modernize our production system and foster 10 strategic projects in areas such as electric vehicles, renewables, green hydrogen, storage, aerospace, agro-industry, advanced health, and microelectronics. In short, today, more than ever, the global economy needs reliable partners that can be trusted, and Spain is and will be one of them. Ladies and gentlemen, Europe and Asia must join forces to tackle global challenges and promote economic development worldwide. We have to take every opportunity to promote dialogue and cooperation for our own sake and for the well-being of our future generations. China and Asia are known for their can-do spirit, and there is so much we can do together. It is in our hands that our words become deeds. Thank you very much.
谢谢桑切斯首相阁下的发言。下面我非常荣幸地邀请马来西亚总理安瓦尔阁下致辞。
Premier Li Chang, Prime Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, 各位来宾，大家好。I would like to thank Mr. Li Baodong and the Chinese government for inviting me to attend and address this august gathering. My heartiest congratulations also to His Excellency Premier Li Chang on his appointment as Premier of the State Council. I'm happy to know that my participation this year coincides with the 10th anniversary of the elevation of Malaysia-China Comprehensive Strategic Partnership since 2013. The theme, An Uncertain World, Solidarity and Cooperation for Development Amid Challenges, is most apt and relevant given the extraordinary ebb and flow of the state of geopolitics and power as well as geoeconomics which we now live in. While not forgetting the bitter lessons of COVID-19 pandemic, and thank you again to China and the Chinese people for their help and assistance, not only to Malaysia but to the region. 谢谢. Nevertheless, the lessons of history remind us that living in an age of uncertainty is but a mere manifestation of the cyclical nature of socio-political as well as economic evolution. The collapse of the Berlin Wall and the ensuing rapprochement signaled the end of the Cold War, but it led to grandiloquent proclamations about the end of history, namely assertions by the West about the triumph of liberal democracy and capitalism being the be-all and end-all for progress. In the meantime, China and India undertook an unprecedented socio-economic reform which resulted in phenomenal growth, empowering them to reclaim their rightful place on the global stage. ASEAN, too, as Premier Hsien Loong mentioned, has grown, and now we have seen the new Africa. What we have seen in the last 3 decades and continue to witness today is that there are other equally legitimate ways of viewing the world and different paths of interpreting and achieving socioeconomic progress. China's socialism with Chinese characteristics, Chinese path to modernization, and President Xi Jinping's idea of a community of shared future for mankind are notable examples of this. Economic empowerment and civilizational dialogues. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the unity government which I lead has introduced the Malaysia Madani concept as an expression of desire to forge our own path based on our own mode as we create a humanistic nation in line with our civilizational values. In this sense, it is also our national philosophy, centered on 6 core values: sustainability, prosperity, innovation, respect, trust, and compassion. These core values are not new, yet they are the most germane for Malaysia given our history, particularly the past few years. Following this philosophy, allow me to share some thoughts on how we can achieve solidarity and cooperation for development amid challenges. First, we should focus on values that unite us as a human family, not those which divide us. Ethics, sincerity, and integrity in dealing with partners in bilateral and multilateral situations must be paramount. The concept of democratic accountability should prevail rather than just trumpeting the slogans or term democracy, which has been used as a means of pigeonholing countries according to rather arbitrary standards. To my mind, democratic accountability enjoins on leaders to be accountable to the people across the board, providing improved standards of living, transparency in the decision-making process, and essentially the overarching practice of good and effective governance. Secondly, while competition is good, there are lines when cooperation is even better. Today, geopolitical and geoeconomic competition has become an escapable feature of Asia. While geoeconomic competition in the past was focused on commodities and resources, the current race is about cutting-edge technology, as demonstrated, for example, in the competition on the semiconductor industry. The rivalry to be ahead in this can take either a productive or destructive turn. On the one hand, we need to recognize that countries will always seek to protect their intellectual property rights and try to stay ahead on the competition. On the other hand, we need to establish certain guardrails so that the competition does not lead to bifurcation in the technological world, one that will raise costs and impede progress. That's why I believe that technological competition should be one of the principal agenda items for discussion at the highest levels, right up there with discourses on security and general economic matters. Having said that, let me reiterate, the unfettered competition must give way to spirited collaboration. We could go even further as we relate this principle of empathy to the analects of Confucius, and what comes to mind are the overarching themes of being humane, conscientious, and kind. The Prophet of Islam said, the believers in their mutual kindness, compassion, and sympathy are just like one body. Thirdly, as we talk of uncertainties in relation among nations, geopolitical conflicts, and economic rivalry, let us not forget that the ordinary citizen with the burden of having to put food on the table and the tangible and pressing uncertainties faced. For the majority of the world's population, wages remain the main form of income. However, according to the ILO's Global Wage Report 2022-2023, wages and the purchasing power of households have dented considerably due to COVID-19 and global inflation. In the absence of adequate policy responses, the immediate future would witness a sharp fall in real incomes, a rise in inequality, which could fuel further social unrest. In the light of this, we should work closely together in the spirit of cooperation and solidarity, striving towards reducing inequality, promoting social justice, and enhancing standards of living for all. I commend you, Premier Li Qiang, and China for taking this bold initiative of continuing interaction and dialogues with countries. Translating lofty ideas into practical reality, solidarity and cooperation is best exemplified in the realization of the Belt and Road Initiative. With the pandemic behind us, we should try to gain or regain its momentum. In closing, I cannot overstress that if we continue to cooperate, speak in a unified voice, and exchange ideas on strategy and best policy practices, we can work together in an Asia that is stronger and more resilient. 谢谢。
谢谢安瓦尔总理阁下的发言。女士们、先生们，近年来有越来越多的非洲国家的领导人和企业家参加博鳌亚洲论坛的各项的活动。今年我们荣幸地邀请到科特迪瓦总理阿西阁下出席今年的年会，并在我们的开幕式上致辞。我荣幸地邀请阿西阁下致辞。
Son Excellence, Monsieur Li Qiang, Premier ministre de la République populaire de Chine. Messieurs les Premiers ministres, Madame le Directeur général du Fonds monétaire international, Son Excellence Ban Ki-moon, Président du Conseil d'administration du Forum de Boao pour l'Asie, Mesdames et Messieurs les responsables du gouvernement populaire de la province de Hainan, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs les chefs de délégation, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, Mesdames et Messieurs, c'est un véritable honneur pour moi de m'exprimer à l'occasion de cette si belle cérémonie d'ouverture de la conférence annuelle du Forum Boao pour l'Asie. En ces instants solennels, je voudrais transmettre, au nom de son Excellence, Monsieur le Président Alassane Ouattara, Président de la République de Côte d'Ivoire, nos plus chaleureuses salutations et félicitations à son Excellence, Monsieur Xi Jinping, pour sa brillante réélection en qualité de Président de la République populaire de Chine. Je veux également adresser mes plus sincères félicitations à son Excellence, Monsieur Li Qiang, pour sa nomination en qualité de Premier ministre de ce grand pays frère et ami de la Côte d'Ivoire. Excellence, Monsieur le Premier ministre, l'année 2023 marque le 40e anniversaire de l'établissement des relations diplomatiques entre la République populaire de Chine et la République de Côte d'Ivoire. À cet effet, je veux ici vous traduire les sentiments de très haute estime que le gouvernement et le peuple ivoirien portent au gouvernement et au peuple chinois, avec lesquels sont partagées les mêmes ambitions de souveraineté, de prospérité, de bonheur, de paix et de fraternité. Nul doute que le meilleur reste à venir dans le cadre de cette relation si fructueuse. Mesdames et Messieurs, le grand maître écrivain chinois Lao Tse nous enseigne, et je cite, « Mieux vaut allumer une bougie que de maudire les ténèbres ». Et je crois, Mesdames et Messieurs, que le Forum de Boao, à travers le thème retenu pour cette conférence, fait le choix courageux d'allumer une bougie sur l'inéluctabilité des immenses défis actuels et futurs à relever par nos pays, plus interpénétrés et interdépendants que jamais dans un monde de plus en plus incertain et instable. Face aux challenges économiques, géopolitiques, énergétique, démographique, climatique ou sanitaire qui s'intensifie, la seule logique qui doit demeurer entre les nations, c'est en effet celle de l'entraide et de la coopération sincère et opiniâtre. Celle qui ne vise qu'une seule chose, créer cette langue commune entre les mondes, sans laquelle, comme l'enseigne l'immense Confucius, les affaires ne peuvent être conclues. Oui, ce forum pour le renforcement de nos coopérations économiques est donc plus essentiel aujourd'hui que jamais. Pour l'Asie, mais aussi pour l'Afrique, ce continent de l'aube de l'humanité, ce monde qui a soif de prospérité et de modernité, et dont les défis présents sont prodigieux. Je veux d'ailleurs saisir cette opportunité pour les aborder avec franchise, car je crois que leur résolution, par le biais de la coopération et de la solidarité entre les nations, dépend non seulement de l'avenir des Africains, mais plus largement encore celui de l'humanité tout entière. Le premier défi, c'est celui de la jeunesse et du développement du secteur privé pour l'insérer. La Côte d'Ivoire, sous le leadership de son Excellence, Monsieur le Président de la République Alassane Ouattara, a réalisé les performances économiques parmi les meilleures au monde, avec une croissance moyenne de 7% de 2012 à 2022. Elle a réduit la pauvreté de plus de 15 points. Son ambition, incarnée dans sa vision 2030, prévoit un doublement du PIB en 10 ans, la réduction de moitié du taux de pauvreté et une augmentation de 10 ans de l'espérance de vie en 10 ans. La jeunesse, défi majeur, l'a conduit à décréter l'année 2023 l'année de la jeunesse. En effet, aujourd'hui, 1 habitant sur 6 de notre planète est africain. En 2050, ce sera 1 sur 4 pour 10 milliards d'individus, avec alors plus de la moitié de la population africaine ayant moins de 25 ans. Comment éduquer, former et insérer ces centaines de millions de jeunes pleins de talent, d'inventivité et de dynamisme qui frapperont avec vigueur aux portes du marché de l'emploi? Le développement prodigieux de la Chine au cours de ces 5 dernières décennies peut être une réponse inspirante à ce défi. Le peuple chinois a su faire de son capital humain un atout pour créer une richesse formidable à un rythme sans précédent. Pour ce faire, en sus de politiques vigoureuses en termes de formation, nous devons, comme vous, développer notre secteur privé, seul capable d'absorber un tel volume de nouveaux entrants sur le marché du travail. Notre nouvelle coopération devra donc privilégier l'investissement privé et la création de valeurs ajoutées nouvelles sur le continent. Cela a été l'un des facteurs clés de succès du continent asiatique. Il en sera de même pour l'Afrique. Je voudrais ainsi, du haut de cette tribune, saisir l'opportunité pour lancer un appel aux entreprises du continent asiatique afin qu'elles privilégient l'investissement privé productif gagnant-gagnant à destination de l'Afrique. Notre deuxième défi concerne la mobilisation des ressources financières clés pour notre avenir. Contraints par les chocs extérieurs de plus en plus variés et imprévisibles, dont les impacts sur les finances publiques sont désastreux, en même temps que s'accroissent les besoins internes sociaux et sécuritaires, l'Afrique est prise en étau entre maintenir sa croissance, source de stabilité et de paix, et gagner et garder un cadre macroéconomique sain. Dans un contexte de crise inflationniste, marqué par des taux d'intérêt de plus en plus élevés, il est vital que la solidarité internationale se manifeste en tout point, aussi bien au niveau bilatéral que multilatéral, pour permettre l'accès de nos pays à des conditions plus souples de financement en adéquation avec nos besoins. Les besoins de l'Afrique en infrastructures économiques et sociales, notamment, dans l'éducation, la santé, l'énergie, les transports et les réseaux sont en effet les plus majeurs et stratégiques. Le troisième défi, enfin, africain, c'est bien sûr le défi climatique. Alors même que l'Afrique n'émet que 4% des gaz à effet de serre, elle n'a aucune possibilité dans le développement des énergies fossiles, aucune responsabilité dans le développement des énergies fossiles et abrite le second poumon de la Terre avec la forêt du Congo. Elle sera, hélas, le continent qui subira le plus les conséquences du changement climatique. Ce défi, nous le vivons comme une urgence absolue. Comment adapter nos modes de vie et nos économies? Comment gérer les déplacements de population? Comment agir face aux sécheresses, à la montée des eaux, aux ravages des tempêtes? Comment garantir la sécurité alimentaire à nos populations dans cette adversité? Il est plus que temps d'agir collectivement et puissamment. Nous attendons ainsi que les financements promis soient au rendez-vous pour une pleine responsabilité et une vraie équité dans l'usage et la protection des ressources de notre planète. À ce titre, l'exemple de la Chine, qui agit avec vigueur pour bâtir une civilisation écologique avec son plan de grande muraille verte ou son investissement annuel de 100 milliards de dollars dans les énergies renouvelables est véritablement inspirant. Mesdames et messieurs, chers amis du continent asiatique, dans ces défis communs, l'Afrique veut voir en l'Asie un partenaire stratégique dont elle a beaucoup à apprendre. Oui, face à ces importants défis du développement, un regard tourné vers la Chine, l'Inde, le Japon, Singapour et la Malaisie, pour ne citer que ces pays-là, et ce qu'ils ont admirablement accompli au cours des 5 dernières décennies, donne à l'Afrique l'occasion d'espérer et de croire que tout est possible pour qui sait agir avec engagement. Enfin, face à ces défis cruciaux, il est temps pour l'Afrique d'avoir toute sa place dans le système de gouvernance mondiale, à l'ONU comme au G20. Parce que sans l'Afrique, il n'y aura pas d'issue pérenne aux défis auxquels la Terre fait face. Parce que l'Afrique est un réservoir inépuisable de ressources naturelles, de talents humains et de solutions collectives. Parce que l'Afrique expérimente depuis l'aube de l'humanité les vertus de la solidarité. Pour sa part, la Côte d'Ivoire, sous la conduite éclairée de son président, son Excellence M. Alassane Ouattara, reste plus que jamais attachée à ces valeurs qui sont l'essence même de l'âme africaine. C'est d'ailleurs dans cet esprit que notre pays a adhéré en 2018 à l'initiative La ceinture et la route, parce qu'elle promeut la coopération, le libre commerce et le renforcement fraternel des liens entre l'Asie, l'Europe et l'Afrique. Excellences, Monsieur le Premier ministre de la République populaire de Chine, Mesdames et Messieurs, les nations représentées à ce forum font partie des plus performantes au monde, avec notamment la Chine, l'économie la plus dynamique de ces 50 dernières années. C'est dans ce contexte que je réitère mon vibrant appel au secteur privé asiatique à venir investir en Afrique. Sur notre continent, il existe un proverbe séculaire qui dit que l'union dans le troupeau fait dormir le lion dans sa faim. S'y trouvent résumées les valeurs cardinales de concorde, de solidarité et de progrès collectif, nécessaires dans la lutte contre le lion de la faim, de la pauvreté et du sous-développement. C'est la page qu'il nous appartient d'écrire aujourd'hui ensemble pour toujours renforcer les liens d'amitié et de coopération qui existent entre l'Asie et l'Afrique, pour notre bénéfice mutuel et, j'ose le dire, pour notre planète, l'humanité tout entière. Vive l'amitié des peuples chinois et ivoiriens, asiatiques et africains, et que vivent longtemps les valeurs de dialogue, de paix, de solidarité entre les nations. Je vous remercie.
« 谢谢阿西总理的致辞。下面我荣幸地邀请国际货币基金组织总裁果尔基瓦耶女士致辞。
Your Excellency Premier Li Chang, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Chao Shan Hao, good morning. It is very fitting to be here today. The Boao Forum for Asia is hosted by the home of Mulantau Lighthouse, the tallest in China, a beacon of light guiding ships to safe harbor, an inspiration for our discussions as we ought to guide our world economy. It has been in choppy waters for quite some time, experiencing shock upon shock upon shock. We expect 2023 to be another difficult year, with global growth falling below 3% as the effects of the war in Ukraine and monetary tightening continue to take hold. A rapid transition from a prolonged period of interest rates to much higher rates necessary to fight inflation has inevitably caused turbulence in the banking sector in some advanced economies and made policy choices even harder. Asia is a source of dynamism. We project this year China and India to contribute 50% of global growth. But Asia also feels uncertainty in the world we are living today. So how can policymakers navigate these times of uncertainty? This year's Boao Forum gives us an answer: through cooperation and solidarity. The twin beacons of light we can rely on to guide us through the challenges that lie ahead. We know that cooperation has already transformed the global economy by deepening trade integration, which has boosted incomes and living standards across the world. Over the past 40 years, the world economy has tripled in size. Emerging markets and developing economies are the biggest beneficiaries. They have quadrupled. Rich countries have already also benefited. They doubled. And here in China, 800 million people have been lifted out of poverty as the country has become even more integrated in the world economy. This is an incredible achievement. Likewise, in countries across Asia, trade integration has been a key ingredient of strong GDP growth for many decades, including trade within the region, which today accounts for almost 50% of the total, with China being a critical hub. But we must also recognize that the benefits of globalization have not been shared equally across countries or people. and we have learned that supply chains must be made more secure and more resilient. Addressing these concerns, as we heard from Premier Li Qiang, it requires a pragmatic approach, working together where it matters most. For example, to reinvigorate international trade in an equitable way and diversify supply chains based on economic logic. Our research shows that the long-term cost of trade fragmentation could be as high as 7% of global GDP, roughly equivalent to the combined annual output of Germany and Japan. And as a highly integrated region, Asia would be most adversely affected by runaway fragmentation. We must keep these costs down through cooperation. It would be paramount for the prosperity of hundreds of millions of people around the world. Cooperation goes hand in hand with solidarity with those in greatest need. Over the past 3 years, we have seen low-income and vulnerable countries and people being particularly severely hit. Solidarity starts at home, with governments protecting vulnerable people in their own countries. This means fiscal policy providing targeted support to those most in need, those most affected by food insecurity or the cost of living crisis. And it also means countries in a relatively stronger position helping vulnerable members of our global community. With interest rates high and many currencies depreciating, this is particularly important for countries in debt distress. We urgently need faster and more efficient global mechanisms for providing debt treatment to these countries. After all, such mechanisms would provide significant benefits to both creditors and debtors. And success would remove one important source of uncertainty for the global picture. And in this regard, I want to recognize with gratitude China's engagement in the common framework for that resolution and China's participation in the new Global Sovereign Debt Roundtable. Solidarity must extend to future generations, and nowhere it matters more than in climate action, especially in Asia, with its high population density and exposure to climate shocks. And it is also the place to steer through the green transition much needed opportunities for growth and for jobs. Let me conclude by stating the obvious. Despite all the forces of fragmentation, we know we are stronger together. Together, we can spread a guiding light far and wide. Together, we can navigate the rough waters to reach a safe harbor. Together, we are wealthier and more secure. 谢谢。
谢谢古尔杰娃总裁女士精彩的发言。下面我荣幸地邀请沙特阿拉伯基础工业公司首席执行官阿尔法基先生致辞。
Your Excellency Li Chang, the Premier of China, Your Excellency Mr. Ban Ki-moon, Chairman of博鰲Forum of Asia, distinguished, honorable states and leaders, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. I'm truly honored to speak for the business community at this prestigious event in such a momentous time. And I'm glad to be able to do so live in front of all of you. This year, the discussion at the博鰲Forum of Asia revolves around the uncertainty afflicting the world. Indeed, things have been changing so fast on the global stage that it will be difficult to re-establish the stability needed for the economic growth. But I see reason for optimism. Over the last several years, structural changes been slowly but surely unfolding between the consumer goods and the energy industry. And these changes might be a sure path towards robust and sustainable economic growth. For the consumer goods industry, these changes has been given an additional leverage to buyers who demand more goods that respect the principles of the sustainability. For the energy industry, these changes pressurize the legacy, carbon-intense, fossil fuel portfolio. In both cases, the dissemination of technology and the sharing of knowledge have become much more important. Now, the chemical industry that I come from accounts only for 7% of the world GDP. But placed as it is between the energy and consumer goods industries, and it offers a way to decarbonize the energy industry portfolio while adding value to its products and solutions. In short, the chemical industry is ideally positioned to drive the sustainable economic growth. But for such sustainable economic growth to flourish globally, close international collaboration will be required, not only between the companies, but between the countries linked by value chain. Being the world's largest market for chemical products, China is the obvious place to establish nexus of global sustainable economic growth. And that's why the country has secured the full active participation of SABIC, one of the world's largest chemical company. While its vision to be the preferred world leader in chemical, SABIC has dug roots deep in China soil. For decades, it has been a favored investor, operator, inventor, and supplier in China. It became a trusted partner in China when it becomes the quality, quantity, and reliability of its delivery. In addition, offering innovative material and sustainable solutions to China customers, SABIC has the two world ethylene crackers in joint ventures, one established with Sinopec in Tianjin, and the other one is planned to be established in Fujian with Fujian Energy Petrochemical Group. SABIC will keep looking to other potential mega projects, investment opportunities in China. These can be enhanced by streamlined and speedy approval process, and SABIC expand its local presence, and it will focus on investing in the development of the technology. Innovation-driven economic growth can speed widely under the strategic alignment between Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 and China Belt and Road Initiative. In sum, SABIC remains firmly committed for fostering mutually beneficial economic growth in and through China. And China aims to rise GDP growth rates around 5% this year. The country is clearly more determined than ever to open up and foster high-quality development in the spirit of the sustainability. As the first featured speaker representative in the international business community, it takes as my responsibility to speak on this behalf. And I believe that the consensus view of my peers is that the best way to create sustainable high-quality development is to embrace free trades with barriers-free export to China and to market-based incentivized business environment for enterprises under all forms of ownership. And with this, I will conclude my speech, and thank you very much. 谢谢。
谢谢阿尔法基先生的发言。最后，我请澳大利亚福特斯克金属集团董事长 Andrew Forrest 先生致辞。
你好，你好。It is a great day to be together here with all of Asia and China, Premier, leaders, fellow Bower Forum councillors, distinguished guests all. After the long dark winter of COVID, I've just returned from touring industrial China, including Hunan, Shanxi, Jiangsu, and Beijing. I congratulate you, President Xi and Premier Li, on your appointment and on your leadership. The perseverance and growth that I have seen in the Chinese people is as a direct result of your leadership, Premier Li and President Xi, and I thank you. During the world's isolation, and I noted during this dark winter, Chinese industry did not slow down. It raced even further ahead in technology, automation, robotics, and manufacturing in the entire supply chain ecosystem the world needs most. Renewable energy, wind, solar, electric mobility, batteries. And there is no other country doing this at such scale. Yet, sadly, not as a businessman or a philanthropist, but as a scientist with fellow scientists around the world, I can report to you that during this dark winter, global warming has accelerated too. 1.5 degrees Celsius warming is tragically most likely to happen this decade. And you know the science was right, but the timing was wrong. It may even happen if El Nino really hits next year. And the cause is simple. To my friends in the fossil fuel industry, you have the greatest challenge, and we are with you. The cause is simple. We are not eradicating fossil fuels fast enough. It is no longer a prediction. We are living in the era of fossil fuel-driven global warming right now. It has no boundaries. It will hurt us all, particularly our beautiful children. And as a child, I was led to believe that out of every setback was the seed to equal or greater opportunity. We must now take this opportunity for them. I present to you all, to our prescient leaders, this massive opportunity is now. Switching to renewable energy will lead to unprecedented economic growth, full employment, and a material improvement in the standard of living of all citizens. China, more than any other country, can lead this decisive action. Premier Li, you lead the world's supply chain, the world's premier supply chain. Your country can rapidly deliver to the global community the decarbonisation we need in months and years, not in years and decades, by supplying the equipment mankind needs with joint ventures all over the world. You have the leadership, the capital, the massive technical and industrial base to make this happen. I truly believe, Premier Li, that China's next 5-year plan will not only be the most important plan in the history of the PRC, but with the right settings, the most important 5-year plan we have seen for the world. I encourage China, like all advanced nations represented here and beyond, that we must ensure the world has the equipment supply it needs to fight global warming. We must pull together to make this happen. Forget economic blocs, intergovernmental squabbles. They will be seen as short-sighted and visionless by our children if we do not act now. We must focus on our agreements and similarities and set aside our differences for the future of all our children. China, we rely on your success, your leadership, and your incredible ability to plan and deliver. As a simple citizen of our shared future, I encourage China to accelerate even further its renewables rollout, already successful, from 120 gigawatts last year to 500 gigawatts per year, to essentially eliminate national emissions in the 2030s. All your base load energy can be met with renewable electricity and with green hydrogen, quickly replacing the gas you currently need to meet your peak power requirements. All your baseload energy can be met such. I am asking the only country, China, the most organised economy in the world, to achieve this great act of acceleration. At the same time, lifting even higher the standard of living of Chinese people and all people of the world. This is the 20th year of Fortescue's and China's partnership. I am so proud that our iron ore has helped build this great nation. My promise to you now is that our iron ore will soon be green as we fully decarbonise our mining sites by 2030, bringing green steel one step closer. Trust mostly what a man says, but trust what he does. It is my life's aim, Premier Lee, and all leaders here in this great hall, that in 2049, we not only celebrate the first century of the PRC, but also that all children are growing up not in an unlivable, polluted planet, but in a green, harmonious world, one that only infinite, renewable energy that yours, President Xi and Premier Lee, in this critical decade, that leadership can give them. Thank you.
各位嘉宾、女士们、先生们，谢谢 Andrew Forrest 精彩发言。请我们以热烈的掌声，对各国领导人、国际组织负责人、工商界代表的精彩发言表示衷心的感谢。下面请大家起立，欢送各位领导人。